ladies and gentlemen, here's what's going to happen today. I have done a lot of due diligence looking at the data. I have a 51-page presentation that we're going to rip through, and I'm going to explain what's going on to you guys. So let's get to it. I'm going to look at Formula 1 GPS and timing data and show you guys what's actually happened in the first 2 races, and we're going to talk about that. So look at this shit. Can everybody see this just fine? Is everybody happy with this? For the most part, what's going to happen today is we're going to look at Bahrain and Saudi performance analysis. And I don't think you will have seen anything like this on the internet before. Most of this presentation and the data inside his presentation are powered from an API by a guy called Jasper. His Twitter is F1 Data Analytics. Everything I'm doing here, you can do. I'm giving full credit to them. I've used a lot of their examples. I've also written a bit of stuff for myself. I do write a bit of Python. This is the kind of stuff that I used to do a lot at my old job. So who am I and what the fuck am I talking about? I worked in Formula 1 for about 10 years. I was at Force India from 2011 to 2014. I was a vehicle dynamics engineer for a bit. I was also trackside performance engineer to DiResta and Perez. 2015 to 2021, I worked at Red Bull Racing. So I moved to Red Bull Racing. I took the job to be Sebastian Vettel's performance engineer to start the 2015 season. But Seb went to Ferrari that year. So Danny Kvyat joined the team. I worked with him for a year and a bit. Max Verstappen joined the team in Barcelona after that, and I was his performance engineer until 2017, technically 2018 race 1. After that, I was a simulator performance engineer from 2018 onwards, so I did kind of the same job, but in the simulator group. I basically did performance analysis and race engineering type work in the simulator. I still worked with the race drivers, I worked with test drivers, I did a lot of data analysis. Now, I am a full-time content creator and streamer. I'm making gaming and Formula 1 content on YouTube and TikTok. If you don't know, I'm not going to do this every stream. I'm just doing this for the first stream because maybe some of you guys have some stuff in common with me. I'm into rock climbing, cycling. I brew my own beer. I haven't in a while. I love coffee, and I'm a gamer. Things I can tell you about. I know how to use data to make a race car faster, and I know how to tell you how to understand your race car from a data point of view. I can't tell you who won the 1999 Monaco Grand Prix, and I can't tell you how many stops they did in whatever race last year, and I don't remember stuff that I can look up, honestly. Like, some people remember facts and stuff like that. I can look shit up. You know who else said that? Albert Einstein. People used to pay me money to do what I'm about to do for you guys for free. I like writing code. I like numbers. Right, here's what we're gonna talk about today. Race 1 and Race 2 Jeddah performance analysis, qualifying and race performance. What can we learn about it? Big questions. Porpoising, and why is it bad? People say it's bad, but nobody really explains why. And there's a lot of reasons why it's bad. Will the 2022 cars be faster than 2021? Will they? What do you think? What do you guys think? And in the future, I'm going to talk about some other stuff as well. It's not just going to be all data. Like, I want to throw some of my opinions and bullshit around. So Vegas versus Monaco. What are we saying about that? Volkswagen Group, McLaren. Remind me of that. And at the end, we'll do just a generic Q&A. But first, if you are not in the Discord, and this is the kind of thing that you like, our Discord is a community of people that game and people that like Formula 1. That's basically us. My socials are here as well. I do F1 content. My TikTok and YouTube are separate for gaming, but my Instagram and Twitter are the same. If you want to see more of this or you're going to miss this, do follow me on YouTube and Twitter. YouTube and Twitter and Discord and Instagram. I post, if I'm going live, you will hear about it on all of my stuff, all right? And we'd love to welcome you guys in. On the weekends, the guys hang out in the Discord, and the guys and gals, everybody, hangs out in the Discord and watches the races together. So we'll see you guys in there, all right? Everybody's welcome. Race 1 summary. Race 1 summary. Let's go. What happened? Ferrari and Red Bull look fast. Mercedes slow. Red Bull double DNF. And that's the end of the presentation. Guys, thank you for coming. I will be live again on Sunday. Just kidding. Ferrari and Red Bull do look fast. That is unarguable. Mercedes, 0.7 seconds off of pole. Nearly a second off of pole, man. We haven't seen this in ages. Like, what? Red Bull double DNF. 3 of the 4 Hondas. Yuck. That's sad. Now, it's time for data. Right, let's look at Bahrain qualifying analysis. Hopefully you guys can see this chart. So basically, here's qualifying performance analysis, color by driver, right? So you've got Leclerc, pole, Verstappen, Sainz, neck and neck, Perez, just shy, 0.3 off. Hamilton, Russell in the mix, not looking terrible. Then just kind of going through the field, it's a bit mixed. It's a bad, sad time for anybody, any Latifi fans in the chat, because absolutely not having a good time. So this is what the distribution of performance looks like. You know, Stroll was 2.5 seconds off. I mean, obviously this was an earlier, it's Q1, fine. And here's your Q2. So big sad. So that's not, everybody knows this. Everybody knows this. Lap time deltas are presented relative to pole. Very mixed grid. Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes on the top spots. And Alpha this year. Can we get some W's in the chat for Alpha this year? Alfa Romeo looking absolutely spicy. Here are what the team's pace looks like. So this is the fastest driver per team, and this makes this chart look so much more clear. Let's assume that whoever was the fastest driver for that team was probably a close representation of the pace of that car. This chart is presented in percent to fastest. When I'm looking at teams and performance numbers, I'm gonna look at percentage delta, because that's gonna make this stuff a lot easier to compare throughout the whole season, right? Now that we're into the data groove, we're gonna start rolling, gamers. We're gonna start moving and talking. Percentages are good to compare events and seasons to each other. Red Bull and Ferrari looking good. Mercedes, when you look at it this way, 0.5% off is not spectacular. That being said, the Haas, the Alpha, the Alpine, and the AlphaTauri looking pretty good. Also, some of these lap times for the lower teams are, you lose the track evolution. The track does get faster once you're getting into Q2 and Q3. It's basically split. Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes looking like they were at the front in Bahrain. Haas, Alpha, Alpine, AlphaTauri, and maybe McLaren. And Williams and Aston looking terrible at the start of the season. But race one woes, not so bad. Not so bad. Now it's time for big data time. So the reason I've got data is because the GPS data is accessible from an API that all the teams have access to and all of you guys have access to. The GPS data is awesome, but there's a lot of problems with using the GPS data, but we can still learn a lot from it. The GPS data is okay. This data, I think, is sampled every 20 meters. So it's not that much. You're looking at like a couple thousand samples for a lap. But the actual telemetry on the car might be sampled at 500 hertz. And the other stuff, like this data set that we have is so incomplete. This data set, you have VCAR, which is only as reliable as the GPS. You've got position. So where the car is in reality, X and Y from the satellite. You've got throttle, which has some resolution. It's not great. Like, you can't look at traction. You can just see, is he 20 meters late on the throttle or not? That's all you can see. And the brake is on or off. There's no steering. If we had steering data from the cars, there might be steering. I don't know. I haven't looked anymore. But if there was steering, we could do so much more analysis on the cars and compare performance as well. But we can still use this data to make some actual meaningful conclusions from the data. So we can turn this into some information. Our first comparison from the Bahrain Grand Prix is looking at the difference between Leclerc and Verstappen. So for anybody that's not familiar with this, let's make this one super simple. I've even taken the brake pressure off because for the most part it's on or off, and I can probably assume where it's on or off. So Leclerc versus Verstappen in qualifying. Verstappen is the blue traces, Leclerc is the red traces. On the top of this plot is the car speed. So you can see the car accelerating down the straight, you can see them braking down to the apex of the corner, and you can see them accelerating out of the corner, and so on and so forth. Here's a low speed corner down here. It's roughly, what is that, about 70 kilometers an hour. Here's a medium low speed corner, medium speed, 125 miles an hour. Here's a high speed corner at 200 kilometers an hour. Yum. Here's the throttle trace. It's reliable enough. Some of the stuff is weird, like some of the data shows Ferrari never going zero throttle. They're off the throttle in these places for sure. So that's weird. And then at the bottom, here's the time delta. So when the time delta is going to the bottom, that means Verstappen is ahead in the lap if you compared them side by side or on top. You know, if there's the ghost car, Max would be ahead here. He's lost a bit of time, gained a bit of time on the brakes there. Let's go. Lost a bit of time through this, and then lost a bit of time here, and Leclerc's ahead here. But this time delta says he's 0.2 ahead, but if you look at the lap time, he's only 1/10 ahead. So this is a little bit off. Here's what's happening in this one. So we've got Verstappen versus Leclerc. So you can tell in general, they've got a little bit of difference between the two of them. I would say in general, the Ferrari looks to be very strong on the brakes. You can tell here, the Ferrari is able to brake later into the corners. Most of them, their cornering speeds are very, very, very similar. Basically, in this lap, the cars were effectively neck and neck going into the final corner, but you can see here, Leclerc braked a lot later and carried a lot more speed through the apex. You could see, like, I mean, the Ferraris rolled a lot more speed. So realistically, Max and Leclerc were very close. Either Max made a mistake here or Leclerc just absolutely destroyed the brakes. This could be because maybe the tires were overheating. I really am not sure, but we can only speculate at this point. But let's say at this point, the Red Bull and Ferrari look very well matched. I would assume, looking at most of the data, that the Red Bull had a toe here. In terms of power and drag levels that they're running, they're pretty similar at this event. Not too much to say about that, honestly. Leclerc put in a great lap, and his performance in the final corner rightfully gained him the pole there. So that's Leclerc versus Verstappen. Definitely, they were a lot closer than that difference. A tenth off, basically. But Leclerc did most of the work in the final corner, or Max lost it there. Now, here's the very interesting bits. So this is Leclerc versus Hamilton, and we can see here the Ferrari looks very quick. And if we look back to the previous slide, in terms of drag and power, I can't tell you if they're more drag or less power, but in terms of their drag and power compromise, so how much downforce they ran and how powerful their engine was, the Red Bull and Ferrari were in a similar spot on this event. If you go to look at the Mercedes looks slow. And I would not say that they're running more downforce because they were not particularly faster consistently anywhere. Arguably, the Ferrari had them in the corners in a lot of places. You can tell a team is faster, first of all, by just looking at the V-car traces. So the Ferrari's faster, similar, faster. Some of these look like slight offsets, but in general, faster. And then the telltale sign is the fact that the time delta trace is growing on the straights for the Ferrari. Just growing and growing. And the Mercedes is not particularly quick anywhere. Mercedes did a little good. Was this turn, is that 10? 11? That is the reality of new cars in Formula 1. Sometimes you hit it and sometimes you don't. You know? And in this instance, Mercedes has not hit it on the head. So, speaking in racing, qualifying is very easy for us to talk about. How fast did you go? That's it. The race is different, and there's a lot of different language that we can use to talk about the race. You'll hear people on the TV and engineers talking about stuff like, what was the pace of that tire like? What was the pace of your car? What does that mean? How was the warm up on that tire? That impacts stuff like pit stops and everything else. Degradation. What does degradation mean? Performance life. Wear life. Interesting kind of ideas. And you might hear different people or commentators talk about it separately. All of these things dictate how you race the car, how fast you go, when you stop, how you push on the outlap, everything. And you're learning about that through practice sessions. When you hear teams talk about plan A, plan B, every team, and also you talk about all these things like your pace, your warm up, your deg, your performance, and wear lives. Every team has different results from these things. So yeah, when you hear the engineers talking to the drivers, like, oh, we're on plan A, they're talking about some formulated strategy based on all of these things. Let's look at a race. So this is Leclerc, Verstappen, Hamilton, and Magnussen in Bahrain. I've isolated their lap times from the race. On the x-axis, across the bottom, this is every lap. So this is lap 1, this is lap 2, this is lap 3 for all the drivers. This vertical axis is the lap time in seconds. So this is saying at this lap, the Ferrari and the Red Bull were about the same pace. Hamilton and Magnussen were the same lap, and then, you know, as the stint, this is the first stint. All the drivers stop, they put on new tires, they go faster. They do a stint, the tires go slower, they put on a new tire, they go faster. And they were all stopping at similar times as well. Every vertical slice through this chart is everybody's lap time at any given time. So this is lap 10. We can see that the Ferrari was about 99.5 seconds. The Red Bull was 99.5. The Mercedes and the Haas were around 101 seconds per lap. So I'm going to go to the next slide. What influences your race pace? What influences the lap times? DRS, how close you are to the car in front of you. Just getting it, even without DRS, getting a tow. Traffic, tire age, and degradation. So degradation can happen very gradually. So that's like wear. So the tire's going and running out of rubber. It's losing grip. It's running out and you're losing time. So like when you see Hamilton's just degrading the tire. And it's probably past his performance life. Tires can overheat. Yeah, weather can influence it as well. Tires can overheat. The fuel load makes this whole thing very difficult to understand in terms of pace and everything else. So let's do something that I don't think I've seen that many people talk about this or do it in data, but I'm going to show you guys. We're going to make this easier to understand, like actually how fast was each tire and remove where it was in the race. We have to make some assumptions. But they're good ones. We'll just take the fuel out of this data. Does this graph look very familiar? This chart is the same as this chart, but you notice that every stint starts at the same lap time. How do we come up with that? How did I remove the fuel from the car? So this is actually dead simple. I made the assumption it's 110 kilos of fuel. The cars can use 110 kilos of fuel for the race, right? I know how many laps are in the race, and in a video on the internet, Lewis Hamilton stated 10 kilos of fuel is about 0.3 of a second of performance. I know that to be true, roughly. So I'm going to use that number. It's a rough assumption. 10 kilos is 0.3 of a second. I can remove that. So I have to make a lot of assumptions about all this data. I have to make the assumption that they've used the same amount of fuel every lap, and they've used a full 110 kilos. Can you underfill? Yeah, you can underfill. And I have to make this assumption. And I don't know. I have no idea how much fuel the teams are putting in the car. So this lets us look at everything throughout the race and normalize it completely. So from a pace point of view, Leclerc's last stint. Wow. Probably what happened here is they saved a lot of fuel under the safety car, and he could push a lot harder. Ferrari and Red Bull, very similar pace. Leclerc, very strong. Very strong. Hamilton, huge deg on the first stint. You thought he was going to hang with the guys. First stint, nowhere. Not good. And then subsequent pace on further stints was bad. Magnussen's second stint, very good. His third stint, very good. His first stint was very rough. Magnussen had a terrible first stint, it looks like, in terms of pace. What do we got here? As expected, Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari, and even Alpha are quick. It was a majority 3-stop. Why? The degradation was 0.1 to 0.2 seconds per lap. You will go faster overall the whole race by doing more stops. That was it. In 2021, the Bahrain race degradation was, I think it was a 1-stop. It was 1/10 of a second or less. More deg, more stops. And the whole point of this is not for me to tell you, oh, look at all this stuff I know. The whole point of this, for me, is that I can make data-based arguments and assessments on stuff and share that information with you guys. And the Formula One community gets smarter and more informed. And when you have conversations with your friends that don't know anything, you will take the same energy to them and just try to explain it and share it with them if they're interested. And you're not going to tell them you don't know anything. You're going to tell them, how fun is this? How much do I love this? This is look how cool this stuff is. We can understand it together now. So we're going to look at Jeddah. What happened in Jeddah? Red Bull and Ferrari were fucking fast. A big gap to the rest of the teams. Amazing battles throughout the field. I thought it was spectacular racing. There was a lot of controversy about the track being not safe. That curb, kind of shit. They can fix that. It'll be fine. Rip Checo. Checo got fucked. Hamilton had huge issues in qualifying. We're going to look at that as well. Is the DRS too much for these cars? And then a little bit of like safety car and pit stops. So yeah, let's talk about it. So qualifying, dude, Red Bull 1 and 4, Ferrari here. Look at the gap. When you put it in terms of visualizing this gap, look at the gap between Verstappen and then the next fastest, Ocon. And again, Latifi having a terrible time. Red Bull, Ferrari fast. Lewis, what happened, man? Lewis, look at this other point. Lewis way down here, bro. What are you doing back here? We're gonna look at that. We're gonna look at the data and see what happened to Lewis. Qualifying team performance. Now, I've broken this down. This is the fastest team, or the fastest driver from every team, so you can see the pecking order of the teams. Red Bull Racing way up there. Ferrari neck and neck. We're 1% off to Ocon and Russell. Alpha looking good again. AlphaTauri looking good, and then the Haas, McLaren, and the Aston Martin and the Williams all the way at the back. So this is the pace by team. This is 1% off right here where everybody's at. 1% off. That is a huge, huge difference. So we're going to the pole, the battle between P1 and P2. This is Perez versus Leclerc. I know the data is a little bit easier to see. I'm going to change the blue color for next time. Now, this data is much more interesting than Bahrain qualifying because the Red Bull and the Ferrari chose completely different strategies. You might say, wow, the Red Bull has a lot of power. Yes, the Red Bull has a lot of power, but I don't think they have more power than they had compared to Ferrari in the previous race. What you see here is that the Red Bull opted to run a much lower downforce, or a substantially lower downforce level than the Ferrari did. Whereas in Bahrain, they chose similar drag levels and downforce levels. So for anybody that's tuning in, here's the car speed on the top. Here's accelerating down the straight, braking into the corner, accelerating out of the corner, braking, accelerating, a little high speed corner here, accelerating, braking, and so on, over and over. Here's the throttle traces. If anybody's looking at this thinking the throttle traces look weird for the Ferrari, it's just a data thing. They probably have come fully off throttle right here, and they're not going through this low speed corner at 20% throttle. So now here's the interesting thing to look at this. So here's the straight line time delta. Red Bull gaining a lot of time on the straights and then losing through the corners. That is characteristic of a lower downforce level. Gaining on straights, losing through corners. You've taken some drag off so you can go faster, but by taking drag off, you take downforce off so you have less grip through the corners. Look at this high speed section as well. Like, this looking pretty tough. This looking pretty tough for the low downforce on the Red Bull, but they made it stick. This time delta is wrong because it finishes the lap with Perez ahead. You know, he's 0.025 seconds ahead. So yeah. And this is a big straight line speed difference. What is this? 10 kph? Yeah, so they're 10 clicks different. The big difference, we saw them in the first race. They chose similar downforce levels in Saudi. Right. Next. Only 0.025 between the two drivers. Very different approaches. Why did they choose a different downforce level at this event? I don't know. You know, they were basically on the same where you can go faster in the straights. If I had to speculate, I will speculate that Red Bull thought they could get away with the lower downforce level and still be competitive in qualifying. And then considering the high speed nature of the circuit, they would have a top speed to play with in the race for overtaking. Does that make sense? So basically, looking at that, I'm thinking Red Bull, if they added downforce to the car, they would have gone the same speed in qualifying, but they would not have had the speed that they had in the race. Now, this is the difficult part that none of you guys wanted to talk about. Is Hamilton gonna retire? After a qualifying performance like this, he probably felt like pretty bad, but Lewis is a top class driver and he will not retire. Lewis is probably feeling pretty defeated after this qualifying performance, and I can see it, but what can let's see if we can understand from this. So this is Hamilton versus Russell. So Hamilton is in the light blue, Russell is in the dark blue. I mean, just looking through the whole lap, Russell, a lot more cornering speed here, a lot more I mean, huge differences through here. Faster. So it's like, what's happened? And we look back at the previous plot and we're like, okay, are they running different downforce? No, because you would see that they're gaining on the straight and losing through corners, but these cars are running the same downforce level. They're the same speed on the straights. There might be a little bit difference from a toe and everything else, but they're running this, what looks like the same car. So the car that Hamilton was driving looks absolutely nowhere in terms of grip. This, for the most part, is characteristic of a setup problem. So maybe they made some risks or took some challenges in P3 with a setup direction that did not pay off. Yes, they're from different sessions, so there would have been slightly more grip, but Lewis just didn't have any confidence in the car. Look at how much he backs out of the throttle through this high-speed section. That means Lewis is not happy with the car. Without more data, it's difficult to tell what was causing that. I have not seen the onboards from their laps, so I can't tell you that. They ran similar drag levels. Is George going to destroy Lewis? I don't think so. I think Lewis was not happy with the car that he was driving, and he couldn't get the most out of it. I've pulled a media pack from Ferrari to look at the grace graph. So race 2, where we've got qualifying's over. This is our team performance, pace performance. Red Bull, Ferrari on top. Alpine and Mercedes 1% off. 1% in lap time is huge. So Ferrari and Red Bull substantially faster than everybody else. Whereas Bahrain was a 3-stop with high degradation. This is a 1-stop race, low deg. And then people are saying DRS needs to be scrapped after watching this race. And I'm going to tell you why I think that's not true. But let's look at the race. Mostly 1-stop, mixed strategies, some used mediums, some new hards. Ricardo and Sainz starting new hard. Lots of different approaches throughout the field. Rather than show you the non-fuel corrected lap times, I've gone ahead and fuel corrected these lap times so we can just look at everybody's pace throughout the race. Okay, so in terms of pace, Verstappen and Leclerc, and I took Perez off this because the pace was there. Fine. Verstappen and Leclerc, very, very similar pace. There's lots of safety car bits in here that I haven't properly removed. But definitely Russell, very far off the pace at the beginning. And Ocon, you know, a lot of the stuff he was battling with his teammate, fine. But, yeah. So, Ferrari, Red Bull, excellent. Russell, they're just clearly off the pace. Now it's time for the big questions. Is Mercedes fucked? There is actually no way for anybody to know what's wrong unless you're in the team. Is it related to the introduction of the E10 fuel? Does it look like it's an engine specific problem? Can they get back on the pace? I'm going to look at some data and I'm going to tell you guys ahead of time. I do not have the answer today. E10 fuel is a fuel which is 10% biofuel, in line with the initiative for the teams to go towards more sustainable fuel sources. Formula One will not be fully electrified for a very long time. I believe, I can't tell you how long it is, but Formula E has the exclusive rights to be the electrified FIA series for quite a long time. Formula E has the exclusive until 2035. Brooklyn Hacker with the facts. Let's look Bahrain 2021 to Bahrain 2022. Here's 2021 versus 2022. What do we have here? I'm gonna explain it first and then I'll dig into the details. So this is straight line speed on the x-axis. So how fast they were going. And this is their lap time. So if a car is over here, on this corner, the car is fast in a straight line and fast lap time. Mazepin, in this example in 2021, he was quick in a straight line, but he was 4 seconds off. Somebody down here is slow in a straight line, but fast lap time. So basically, left or right on the graph tells me how quick you are at the end of a straight. Up and down tells me how fast you are. So for example, Verstappen is on 0, up and down. That means he was the pole position lap. And if you look at his end of straight speed or his straight line speed, he was somewhere in the middle of the whole thing. So 2021, I've done you guys and gals the favor of coloring this by engine. Light blue, Mercedes. Red, Ferrari. Orange yellow is Renault. Red, Ferrari. Blue is Honda. You can see here in 2021 in Bahrain, the Mercedes, regardless of how quick they were in lap time, this way, in terms of average speeds, they were in the middle. They were distributed somewhere about the middle. Now, Ferrari as well, up and down. Ferrari, good distribution about the middle. Alpine, the Renault engines, quick in a straight line. The Hondas are on the fast of the fast of the fast. Hondas do be bussin'. We've looked at one race. I would say, with the exception of Latifi, it looks like Latifi got a huge toe, and Latifi was absolutely nowhere in terms of pace, so we don't care. Look at the Mercedes this year. They make up the bottom third of straight line speed. They've got a huge difference in pace. The Mercedes looking very slow as a team. Engine Mode 11 on his YouTube, he also does excellent YouTube content. He posted a slide on this, and I have this is the same data, but I do have a different opinion to him. And the good thing about the internet is we can both have different opinions and we can talk about them. Last year, Mercedes in the mix, everybody all over the place. Mercedes in Bahrain this year on the lower end of the straight line speed. So this looks like if we go back, see how Red Bulls are up here, fast and fast. So fast in a straight line, fast through the lap. This looks like these guys this year. 2021, you would say, well, all the other Mercedes power unit cars are slow. These guys are pushing. Look at this year again in Jeddah. They're making up the bottom third of the straight line speed and a large variation performance, and they're over half a second off the closest one. So you could probably conclude two things so far this year. All of the Mercedes powered cars have been pretty slow in a straight line and through the corners, which is bad. Let's be honest here. We've got two samples. Based on the GPS overlays, I don't think that they're running too much downforce. I think the Mercedes engine right now on all of their cars is relatively low performance to the Honda and the Ferrari. Honda and Ferrari engines look excellent this year. so far. Right. Before anybody gets like, oh, it's over. It's over. It's not over. It's not over. Porpoising? Why is it bad? I've heard so many people talk about porpoising and most of the explanations kind of suck. Will the 2022 cars be faster than 2021? Are we ready to get rid of DRS based on what we saw in Jeddah? Melbourne, what are we thinking about that? This is what porpoising does. Fuck you, downforce. That's what porpoising does. People are asking, what the fuck is porpoising? Maybe. Maybe, I don't know. This is what porpoising looks like. Look at that. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Look at that. That is what porpoising looks like. It's fucking terrible. And it makes a lot of things bad on so many different fronts. And that's a stupid explanation, but porpoising is basically atrocious for everything. So not only does porpoising look like it's disruptive and bouncing the driver all over the place, it's changing the grip, the downforce is all over the place, and the things you have to do to fix porpoising make the car slower. When you fix porpoising, you do not go faster. So the way porpoising works is, imagine that there's something that happens, like your car's going down the straight and the car's getting closer to the ground, and at some point something happens. Let's just say that as you're going, the front of your car is getting closer to the ground, and it's picking up downforce. As the front of your car gets closer to the ground, as your front wing gets closer to the ground, you pick up more front load or more front downforce. Then all of a sudden, at some point, let's say something happens, and let's say the front wing stalls. It's probably not the front wing, but let's say the front wing stalls. You will lose a shitload of front load, so the nose pops up. And then as you start going, depending on how fast you're going, the wing gets in the same spot again. That you've got a suspension with a natural frequency. So when you have these things happening at the same time, the car just starts itself. How do you fix that? Well, you have to raise the car up to avoid the car going to that place. Let's assume it's the front ride height. So you have to raise the car. Raising the car, what does raising the car do? Raising the car does two things. First of all, pulling the front of the car away from the ground reduces the amount of downforce on the car, on the front. And you have to balance that out. So maybe you have to raise the rear as well. Exactly. Then you raise the rear. Here's another thing. The car shits itself. That's it. Aerodynamically, the car shits itself. So another thing that people don't appreciate as well is the higher the rear of the car is, rear ride height is typically like a very significant impact on the drag level of the car. So if the car is up higher on the rear, that adds a lot of drag. So imagine that Mercedes have trouble with their power and their engine doesn't look great. Imagine they've got porpoising issues and they have to raise the whole car up, thus increasing the drag further. It could make their engine performance deficit look bigger, because we cannot tell from the outside, looking at speeds and everything else, we cannot tell the difference between engine power and drag. High rake is high drag. It's because, here's the reason why teams most likely have not caught porpoising in the tunnel. Your tunnel, first of all, is often static, and you do not have a suspension in the wind tunnel. I can't tell you exactly why, but basically your wind tunnel is, the car is affected. It's not dynamic. Like the car doesn't have a suspension and a mass in the tunnel. The wind tunnel and your CFD are approximations of reality. There is suspension on the car, but it's not like you have a heavy car on an appropriately stiff suspension riding on the wind tunnel. You've got the car mounted on some arm, and the arm is holding it. The purpose of the wind tunnel is to put the car into ride heights and attitudes that the car will see on track, and then you measure the downforce coming off of it. So there's not a suspension actually in the wind tunnel. There's the wheels will articulate, but there's not a suspension suspending the car. The car's being held, so you don't get this dynamic condition. So it's very possible that you would not have caught this. Like imagine you generated an aero map and you see that there's a drop off. Well, unless you simulate that with a dynamic lap time simulation, you're not going to see that at certain ride height or with a bump in the road that you get this cycle, this oscillation in your suspension, and then the arrows shifting and then exacerbating each other, and you have the porpoising happen. You have this guy. You have, where is he? Hold on, where's he at? You have this guy. Why is porpoising not cute? Because it's fucking annoying. That's why. And it's probably difficult to solve in the short term, which is why you still people seeing problems with it. It has huge impacts on the philosophy of the car and how things are working. So, will the 2022 cars be faster than 2021? Very possibly, or at least they will get very close. There's a lot of talk in the media of the cars being overweight. I do not know how much overweight they are. Literally no idea. I think they're pretty overweight. So let's assume that they're 10 kilos overweight. 10 kilos, as we discussed earlier, 0.3 of a second. Throughout the season, development is difficult to assess, so I don't know how much faster the cars will get throughout the season. But 2021 pole time so far, Bahrain, 1.6 seconds slower. So if we just take 10 kilos off of it, it's 1.3. And then this should say Jeddah, 0.7 seconds. So we're getting close. I think this year with development, we're going to get faster. And I think we're going to be very close to 2021 lap times, in my opinion. I think this is a brand new car. This is a brand new car with 3 events on it. Now, somebody said this is probably the best. This is probably the best racing that I have seen in my career in the sport. Yes, we've had some good stuff back in the day. For the US folks, 798 is about 1,760 pounds. Are we getting rid of DRS? Should we get rid of it? Yes or no? DRS is the drag reduction system. The drag reduction system basically is a hydraulically operated rear wing flap. So you see that the rear wing has 2 elements. There's the big one called the main plane and the flap. I think it might be different this year. Fuck it. I don't know. But when you hit the DRS, it opens the flap, which reduces the amount of downforce on the rear of the car and drastically reduces the amount of drag on the car. Yeah, everybody's saying don't get rid of DRS. I'm going to tell you now, I agree with you. I do not think we should get rid of DRS. I think they need to fix some of it, but a lot of people are talking about it. How beautiful was this racing, ladies and gentlemen? How beautiful was this? Now, this is for anybody that was asking, what is the DRS system? This is a rear wing closed with DRS off. This is a rear wing with the DRS open. This basically reduces the amount of load and drag on the car substantially to something over 10 kilometers an hour difference in straight line speed. So this looked really weird, and a lot of people are saying we need to tweak the DRS zones. So the DRS works on the track. The DRS works like this. In the race, when you're within 1 second of somebody, when you go through a specific point on the track called a detection zone, that gives you DRS for the following DRS straight. Anyway, let's do this real quick. All right, here's the FIA map. So basically what they had happen was the detection was into the braking zone of this corner. If the detection was back here, that would have been fine, because it's not like they would have been playing cat and mouse. You're not going to lift out early. So basically they needed to move the detection zone, but it's a little bit gimmicky in my opinion. So that is the end of my presentation for today. Seriously, huge thank you for F1 Data Analytics on Twitter. These guys made this possible. These guys made this entirely possible. Without that kind of data, I wouldn't be able to share this stuff with you guys. So, man, this has been a lot of fun. I really, really hope that you guys have enjoyed this.